All right. Hello, welcome. Thanks for viewing. We're back from our trip in Europe. We were on a cruise, started in Barcelona, Cannes, France. Then we stopped in a port, off to Rome, and then finally we went down to a small city in Sicily, which we thought was going to be very interesting. It was, but not in the way you would really think, right? For the normal type of trip that we would like to see. And you know, like if you're going through the streets of Rome and you see the little gelato places and purses and shoes and fashion and things of that nature. Here we are in Catania, Sicily. Catania. What can I say about Catania? People were nice, Italian. You know, it's a great country. But I don't think the city has seen a can of paint since World War II. It really, or it's mostly spray paint from graffiti. It was a little dirty, I'm being kind, and it just was kind of a weird, like, what are we doing here? But every time we go into a city, if we go to Venice, we always like to go off the beaten path and get lost and kind of see the flavor of the local way of life and look at real local, not touristy type things. So we were looking for a restaurant. What did we find instead? Not one, not two, not three, but four. That's the European way for four, Americans this way. 4 different pot stores. Pot, like as in marijuana. And one of the interesting aspects that I did not know, so I obviously didn't do my due diligence or go through TripAdvisors and says, is pot legal in Italy? But light pot's legal in Italy. And anyway, what I wanted to make mention was that this one store, I was joking. I was like thoroughly like blown away because big canisters of pot and buds and you know, from my high school days, and I grew up in, many of you know, the North Shore of Winnetka, Illinois, the North Shore of Chicago, and that's where the connection for working in the commodity exchange. Well, back in the mid 70s, we had, you know, this little magazine came out, was brand new, called High Times, right? And it's like big time right now. High Times. We had Panama Red. I think I don't know, was it? Trying to think of the guy who sang the song. Was it Jerry Jeff Walker? Jerry, something like that, came up with the song Panama Red. So you had Colombian Gold, Panama Red. You had hash oil. I mean, all kinds of stuff back in the 70s. And again, with the, you know, the drug wars that took over, and we all know what happened with the cocaine scene in the 80s. And then Amsterdam always had their hash bars. You know, up until, I'd say, the last 8 to 10 years, some conservative, most Americans aren't, I mean, you're hearing about this wave of pot now. You're hearing about the big movement. Canada's legal. Now Italy is light pot. So what's the point that I'm trying to make? Well, the point I'm trying to make is it's really becoming not just a Central and Northern America situation. It's global, man. And I think the leaders, and as we become you know, you look at the youth and where we're moving, it's an area that most investors probably are underexposed to. Now, we've had a couple great trades in some pot stuff or stocks this year. Zinnerby, and I know I did a video on that one, and we did a beautiful piece on, again, a breakout on GWPH, which occurred couple weeks ago. Remember I said look for a breakout above 175 and probably get to 200. Well, there was the breakout right here. That was the move. This is a 60-minute chart, and let me just point out to you what I'm referencing. We were talking about a move greater than that line in the sand, and then I was looking for a pop, and that's where the pop came, right? So what I would have to tell you now is, what am I thinking at this point in time? There's been a couple markets or a couple stocks that, and oh, by the way, it dipped all the way back down into this gold line. That's the person's, that's a strong pivotal support area. You can see now we're kind of like looking at strong support here at the 172 with real strong resistance at 180. I'd wait for another close, a daily close greater than 180. That gets us back above that monthly pivot, that blue line up there. And GWPH, if it has supporting volume behind it, it's going to hit and run up and retest that $200 mark. So keep that in mind. What I have been looking at has been for a long time TLRY, pot growing company. TLRY at 88, I said I don't like it. It's too volatile. And I was not a big fan of TLRY at that price level at 180. And I didn't like it at 55. I said back on a video, I said it's probably got a shot to get down into the low 40s. And here we are in the mid 40s. So do I like it yet? I'm starting to like TLRY down here. Why? Well, this is a volume indicator, and you can clearly see the trend and the volume is up and the price is down. That's what we call a volume convergence formation. So TLRY had like a kind of a pump, and then they dumped it. It had a slight pump while I was in Europe last week, and then they dumped it again. So it's starting to act squirrely, and I like squirrely after declines because that tells me there's people that maybe being forced to liquidate their trade and others are coming in buying it. There's no volume in that selling zone. So this is probably setting up for a move higher. The question is, which day are we looking at? There's a couple things that I would be watchful in TLRY. And here's the first one. If you have Thinkorswim, which this chart, if you can see this chart back here, this is Thinkorswim with the person's pivots, number one. With the relative strength PMC person's indicator. This is a relative strength tool. And let me put up TLRY real quick for you. TLRY, TLRY. Here we go. So TLRY has solid red. And I'm not really, and the volume is not looking great. So TLRY in the 60-minute chart doesn't look prime or ripe for a pop yet. So if you can maybe look for this week, and possibly this is the two areas that I would say to be watchful for. If we come down on an intraday basis around 41.5, not to be too precise, 41.58 is the person's pivot support target. That's the green line in the sand. If we don't see falling volume, and you can use on balance volume, if it doesn't decline and price goes down, then that's okay. But if the price goes down and on balance volume weakens, then it's got some more issues. So my 2 cents is simply this. I'm right now watchful for an overall market relative weakness to take advantage of maybe funds or asset reallocation. Maybe someone's in a margin call. Maybe they're liquidating. Maybe they have too much exposure to TLRY. And I want to take advantage of that at lower prices, somewhere near that 41.5 zone. If we dip down there real quick and there's no real strong volume supporting that decline, that's the pickup that I'd like to look for. It's a bullish convergence pattern, number one. Number two, I would also look for something we haven't seen in a long time. If you notice the blue line here, and then price goes north of the blue line, that's positive. When price goes below negative, that is bad. So right now, where are we? We're below the blue line. We're below the prior blue line. That's the pivot. Person's pivot's been bearish. So if we're going to go from bearish to bullish, what do you think we're waiting for? Either buying it lower or I'm buying on confirmation that it's resuming an uptrend. So I'm waiting for a daily close greater than the monthly pivot, and that's up at around 47. I'd rather buy it lower. I don't want to sell it here because it might not get lower. It's just not in the right spot for me to buy. But I think TLRY at lower prices, it's starting to set up for a good recovery to the upside in the next few weeks. The other one that everyone's probably quite familiar with is Canopy Growth. Canopy Growth, and again, I've got a few indicators up here, so let me get rid of one. Hold on. Perfect. All right, so for Canopy Growth, it's had a, obviously it's been down into the 30s, and it's not really expanded into newer highs. As you can see, we had one quick pop the other week up to around 52, and look where we're at. We're resting at a pivot support. Volume on balance, volume's not ugly looking. My volume indicator is, and even volume in the histogram component shows relative weakness. So again, same concept, but in this instance with Canopy, I'm thinking the market is going to try and go for one more attempt at 40 and maybe a little bit lower, 36. If I'm wrong, no problem. I also have my backup plan. I'm looking for a daily close back above 47. If it gets above 47, we can buy it. Right in here, very iffy. So you can't really do much to this trade, but I think with the fact that it is a incredibly legitimized industry, one of the interesting things about these pot store, or the one that we went in, I jokingly, I'm pretty personable, and I go in and I ask the people, I go, so it's light, it's like near beer, and they're like, yeah. And yet they have all kinds of cosmetic products. And I'm like, literally facial cream with pot in it? No, it's CBD oil. And I go, what's that supposed to do? And they couldn't sell me on the idea that CBD oil was going to rejuvenate my face. But needless to say, I did get some information. And I said, well, what if you wanted to grow it at home? And they go, oh, we sell pot seeds. I go, what? And that was interesting. Now, I didn't buy any, but there was a company that they opened the drawer and they had this box and they were like, well, we got this and this. It's all packaged seeds that you could buy. And I'll give you a company, it's a seed bank. It's called Barney's Farms. And I think you can look it up by barneysfarm.com. And I think they're out of Amsterdam. And I mean, if you go visit the website, it's pretty crazy. They have all kinds of different, like, crazy knock your head out of the park pot versus, I don't know, all kinds of different crazy stuff. So what's the moral I'm trying to tell you? It's becoming a little bit more legitimized. You got ex-House Speaker Boehner out promoting it. You got Democrat Senator Daschle out promoting it. And it's starting to get a lot more traction. And it does have valid medical uses. Pot cream for arthritis sufferers. All of this stuff is going to really, I think, expand in the next, wildly in the next, I don't mean to grow like a weed, so to speak, but it's going to grow like a weed. If you haven't been on this pot story, it's hard not to be, right, with Canada legalizing it. But I think that most investors that I talk to, they're underexposed to this space. I think you want to be careful because it's still, you don't want to be growing pot in your house and having the feds walk in because it's still a federal offense, right? But I think as an investor, we can have exposure to some of these names. We just want to be careful. Be like what I like to do. I don't like to pay up for something. I like to buy pullbacks, right? And if I miss a move, then I'll look at another trade. And in this case, I think we're going to get an opportunity. If you think you've missed the boat and you missed it down here, just don't buy the breakout. Just don't buy the breakout. I think we got another shot at 40 and maybe a little bit lower in the summer months. So use this as a time frame to scale in a little bit over time. If you have a 3 to 5 year window, you don't want to be locked all in on one company. I think TLRY's got potential at lower levels, and CGC. So look for lower levels or look for that breakout above the market. So I hope you enjoyed my little pot analysis and my due diligence in finding a pot store in Sicily, of all places. And oh, by the way, we ended this cruise in Venice, and we're walking through the streets of Venice, and they've got the Murano glass stores, and they got the little mask stores, and it's like every store is the same kind of stuff, right? Except for one guy. And what was it? A pot store. And what is that guy selling? Lollipops, and I started asking him. He had seeds, but the seeds that he was selling were light pot seeds. So anyway, it's something that, think of all the tourists that are coming through, and the more and more people that see it, the more it's going to become more popular. And again, you're going to want, as an investor, some exposure into this space. So ZYNE was one pharmaceutical company we told everyone about and did a great trade in our live trading room. And that was the move when it broke out above, and it was right here on this daily. You could pretty much see we're talking about a breakout over 5.5, and it was that day on a 60-minute, and it shot straight up. And then now look where this thing is at 15. ZYNE Pharmaceuticals, ZYNE. I would pray for a pullback, and hopefully we get another pullback somewhere in the mid $11 area in the next week or two. ZYNE Pharmaceutical. GWPH is another one. And again, just a summary, TLRY, and most importantly, CGC. Hope you enjoyed today's commentary. It's great to be back in the US of A. And as I see more analysis or different trades, I'll certainly post them on the YouTube video. Thanks, everybody.